Full God Seth. Primary Literature Overview. Seth the Deity, Good and Bad. Part 1. Seth, the god of confusion, is the major study of the god Seth, and despite its age, is still considered to be the seminal work on the deity. However, there are new studies that address different aspects of the cult of Seth. Tavel's work is presented in 5 sections: the name and annal of Seth, Seth the enemy and friend of Osiris, Seth the murderer of Osiris, Seth repelling Apep, and Seth the foreigner. In addition to these main chapters, Taveld also includes a detailed index of Seth-related texts, papyri and inscriptions that are referred to in the book. However, despite the extent of the detailed research undertaken, the work does contain sections that are debatable in their content. Tavel discusses the meaning of the name of Seth, but presents etymologies initially from the 2nd century, Ad Isis and Osiris by Plutarch, and then from the late period that are compatible with the theories of Plutarch, but fails to propose or discuss any earlier etymologies. The chapter continues with a brief discussion of the Seth animal, and a short discourse on the tail, but does not discuss any of the variations that occur to the body or head of Seth. He also summarily dismisses the theories of both Emery and Sandy that Seth was a beneficial pre-dynastic god of Upper Egypt. By doing so, he dismisses the notion that Seth was once worshipped as a major and important god, and the consideration that he was once revered as a beneficent deity, and his status at the start of the dynastic period was simply a denigration as the result of being on the losing side, history being written by the victors. The interpretation of the relationship between Horus and Seth proposed by Taveld is the major section of the work, and is the one most open to question. His proposition that the homosexual incident between Horus and Seth, usually considered as a minor incident in the myth, is in fact the main theme. He postulates that the injury to the eye of Horus was not caused by a blow, but instead by rape, and the reciprocal seizing of Seth's testicles was a sexual act. The nature of the castration of Seth is presented as the removal of the semen from his testicles rather than their removal from Seth's groin. It can be argued that Taveld has begun with too rigid an approach to this myth, and as a consequence he does not countenance the idea of any historical background to it. The overall premise that underlies the work is that Taveld has proceeded from the outset to present Seth in a negative light, stressing his bad points while suppressing his good points. Even the title God of Confusion ignores Seth's good side. Taveld condensed this work into an article that was published in 2 separate books, the Oxford Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt and the Ancient Gods Speak. Although these are separated by 34 years from the original work, no new interpretation or research was incorporated into them. Cruz Uribe analysis Tavel's work in his article Seth, God of Power and Might, and is of the opinion that his interpretation of Seth's character is inadequate. Vale's insistence on taking the word phti as a reference to sexual potency in support of his premise that the main theme of the Horus and Seth conflict relates to the homosexual incidents between them, ignores the meaning of the word strength. What is not explored is the word's link to Horus and Seth's maintenance of order within Egypt. Seth did not rely on confusion to defeat his enemies, but uses his natural attributes of his strength, his voice, his many different forms and his weapons. Confusion and disorder are not part of the storms evoked by Seth, which are those of power and strength. The final comments Cruz-Uribe makes are on the negative portrayal of Seth throughout the work, with interpretations from the denigration of later periods being retrospectively applied to Seth from the earliest periods. He proposes instead that at the start of the Osiris cult, the murder of Osiris was not considered an evil act, but was an action necessary to elucidate death. Instead of Seth being severally punished for his crime, he is judged and reconciled with Horus. Evil